I came on fast by the standards of this system. I haven't finished my drink. Lovely latte. This video anyway is going to be about empowerment and class war. Yeah, it's just notes I've made this morning, plus probably had a bit spontaneously at the end. So the word empowerment was on my mind this morning. I thought, is it a buzzword? And I thought it's more important than just a buzzword. It's of central importance. Let's just take randomly something to start off with. Imagine TV news, national TV news. This is. Well, like I've always said in all my other videos, I want to get rid of monopoly news corporations and what have you. So they go in with the newspapers sort of things, something that was really want to cut down the size. Because it's no good saying, oh, we're nice, we're good, we're innocent, don't worry about that. You give the opportunity for bad eggs to take over you. It's just a relevant point whether you're nice or not. It's not the point. So, and that makes them, people who say that, complicit. So we're not going to ever go down that path of saying, oh, we're nice, we can have a channel of our own, and when in effect that makes us the scumbags. We're not going to do that. We can have a channel, right, but it would be subjected to our own anti-monopoly laws. See what I mean? You're saying, like, I've got a video on here, right, but no, it's not exactly a billionaire-owned news media corporation that it could be perceived as monopolistic. I mean, I imagine monopoly laws exist now, right? But they're just basically nothing. The monopoly laws don't stop Rupert Murdoch, do they? So what's the point of them? I mean, he's the archetypal, stereotypical monopoly person we want rid of. So if the government said, oh, we've got monopoly laws in place, and we said, well, Rupert Murdoch then, he's the one person everyone who's against monopolies in the news media wants rid of. And he's like almost 100, and he's been going on since God knows when. Oh, I can't remember what he wasn't, everyone can't stand him. They can't stand him in America, can't stand him in his own country, Australia, they can't stand him here. And it just got worse. So these monopoly laws are useless. I mean, assuming they exist, but whether they exist or not, I don't regard them as monopoly laws. They're not worth writing on tissue paper. That shit. That makes sense. Yeah, and I think that the world we live in enables piss takers to take the piss. So, like, this empowerment thing, if we sort of like went on about, getting these propaganda news networks to shut the effing well up, we can do that. We can do that with monopoly laws. We don't need to be like Trump, who goes around like throwing bombs at them. Literally. I mean, I'm not being metaphorical there. Trump supporters did send bombs to TV news networks, didn't like. We do it through anti-monopoly laws. And we're not going to be weak. I want to get to that soon. People need work in the sense of activity, hence empowerment is key. But capitalism that I've lived under leaves millions out. And in the 80s they were saying, oh, well, that's just for inflation reasons. You rot so we can have low inflation, Rosa Friday. Don't say that anymore, by the way, because of realignment, I think. So this revolution, how would it empower me? Well, there would be more industries, news media, networks, academia that had moved on because the revolution would have happened, and it would be fitting for me. I'd be able to say I was part of this. So that's for me personally. Obviously, that's key. It's a big key for me personally. It's for me that would be like, well, what a revolution that is. And so you could ask, what would these industries be like? Well, think about it. I slant a little bit to academia type, and I'd be in a new academia. New academia would be the same as old academia in many ways, except that a revolution would have occurred. So that would revolutionize a lot of the discourse in the social sciences. And instead of critiquing the flaws in contemporary capitalism and in the state superstructure and propaganda matrix as we know it now, we would instead be looking back at it akin to history. Question to myself here was, beyond yourself, beyond myself, what would be the big policy that demonstrated revolution? In these scribbled notes, I answered, I need to be careful to avoid a fetish for numbers, but over the years, a real terms, gigantic redistribution of income in the hundreds of billions. That'd be the big policy. And historical inquiries into the propaganda matrix and into the news media. These inquiries would simultaneously educate the public concerning the science of propaganda, as many fell victim to it. Next question I asked myself on these scribbled notes is, we need this to happen. Are you now supportive of revolution? And the answer is, if it's income-based, then yes. If the revolutionaries couldn't promise me that it was income-based, then no. Hence, my answer is a conditional yes. I think everyone's answers for revolution is probably a conditional yes. I mean, not going to support any revolution. They're going to support a fascist revolution, for instance. But yeah, it's a conditional yes on if it's on income for me. Revolutions cost them not to be taken lightly. I mean, I understand that people are scared for the kids, scared for the pets, keep them away, or scared for themselves. If you're not a street fighter like I'm not, then you don't want to get involved. But I'd be involved in other ways, but not like that, not frontline stuff. So it's for people who are cut out for that sort of thing. But it's an absolute. It's not fair for those who are anti-revolutionary, who are very, 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 very powerful already, to like slag us off, because they haven't been victims of state superstructure and propaganda matrix. They've been enabling it and propping it up, benefiting from it. So it's not fair for them to say to us that it's a bad thing because it'll cause fear and stuff. It's their fault. It's their fault. They're like a criminal who has been caught, getting questioned by the police, and then they say, "Oh, look what you're doing. This is horrible." Well, it's their fault. It's their fault that this is happening. So we need to get that clear. The revolution that should happen, I support. I'd be delighted if it happened, but it's because I've been pushed into this by the state superstructure and the propaganda matrix. I haven't just thought, doesn't this sound interesting? I'll go along with it. It's not like that. It's before 2023, totally against revolution forever, but I just had to wake up and smell the coffee about the world we live in, how cruel it is. So, but yeah, this is basically the video then. That I've said everything. I think empowerment, kind of class war, income redistribution, we all want to be empowered. It'll benefit me, but we don't want to have excess power. Monopoly laws will be applied to ourselves. And an interesting video to do would be to ask, are the trends heading this way? You have to be very careful with the revolution stuff, I admit, because the sort of people who support it, some of them are victims of the state superstructure and all that, but they're manipulatable. They can be propagandized by the far right and fascism to do a revolution that is different to ours, but tries to appeal to the uneducated side of the working class that would say, like, would point to what I'm saying here and say, look at Paul's there. Yeah. You got the income side, but we're going to scapegoat people. So that sort of appeals to their shadow, if you know what I mean. That appeals to their negative side of their mind, their dark side. And we need to be. I mean, I'm just one person, so it needs to be people who are thinkers who know how to counter that divide, because that kind of divide and rule revolution is precisely what the state superstructure do already, but do more subtly. Whereas the revolutionary fascists would just, confess their racism, confess their hate, confess their homophobia, confess their anti-Semitism, confess their anti-everything, because they're anti all kinds of things. And they would try and would give that and the income side. So they would, so it'd be like a watered down Nazism. Watered down because I'm not saying they would stick people, or even be able to stick people in gas chambers and stuff. But it'd be like, and they might even directly appeal to like swastika symbolism and Hitler and things like that. And we've seen that it can work. We've seen that with the Second World War. So they're capable of that to a certain extent, except to say that in the UK, I've only seen fascism go up to the extent of Mosley Farage types. I haven't seen it go up to there. So like their revolution would fail, I think, because I don't think they can, because middle class are too educated. But this is the sort of thinking that we need to do to counter it. They've got some support, but not enough support. But you must understand our class, the collapse of the British middle class could change things. I know. I think the state superstructure and the propaganda matrix is on a decline. They're doing terrible. They can't handle. They're losing. They realign like they're doing gymnastics because they just can't. I don't know why they can't look ahead for 2 minutes, but there we go. They're just a mess. And you'd think that eventually, with the complete collapse and mess and patheticness of them, that people come over to us as thoughtful adults in the room. But the mess is too much to, just vote Liberal Democrat. I think everything will be hunky-dory. They're part of it, basically. You know what I mean? They're part of the state superstructure and propaganda matrix. But people need to understand the situation, how dire it is. And yeah, I mean, like the state superstructure and propaganda matrix, it shows us their ass constantly. It's time we showed them our ass and our finger. Because they're just wrecking everything. They're leaving people disempowered, wasted lives, lack of self-belief, constantly energy drained, no hope, and yet they're told that they live in a free society where they've got as much power and voice as anyone else at the top. I'm sorry, but if we're looking at, we say like top 26 people in the world have the same amount of wealth and income as the bottom 3.4 billion. And then you look at the billionaire owned news media for getting their voice out to millions of people, where we're making videos online that get out to about 6 people. This isn't, and also there's the violent state. The US is like trying to be like an empire where it just doesn't give a crap about applying rules to itself. It can do whatever it wants. Who's going to stop it? Where the bee's knees sort of thing. This world isn't fair in terms of money and wealth. It isn't fair in terms of voice. It doesn't give peace a chance. It's a vastly unequal, economically fascist, vile, violent, terrible situation. It's a terrible system. It's terrible, and it's got to come down. It's got to collapse. I mean, to say I'm past tinkering is to understate it. That's the video anyway. I've made my points.